Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief of Staff.
Thanks, everybody. Sit down.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Oh, come on. That's all you got? Thank you very, very much, everybody. Thank you, by the way, especially to General Johnson, to John, thanks for letting us come. Chief Ludwig, thanks for letting us be here today. Greg Lingell, thanks for taking care of the place and keeping an eye on these rapscallions. Congratulations to the new dean, Andy Armacost, and thanks to Hans Mew for leading our intercollegiate athletics in such a great, great way. It's really a thrill to be back with you guys. Thanks for letting me come. And a special thank you to all of you cadets for volunteering to come over this afternoon. Life's good at the bottom of the food chain, isn't it? You're going to be surprised it's actually better now than it's ever going to be in the future for you in a lot of ways. Because we're toughening things up in the United States Air Force. Let me tell you what I want to talk to you about. It all starts with this first slide. Fred, can you bring this up? There's a deep message here I want you to think about for the next couple of days. Here's where it really starts. Yeah, this is my wife, Betty. And she is magic, and she's also sitting right there in the second row. Betty, stand up and wave. Next slide, please. This is a big week in our Air Force. Next Saturday, a week from this Saturday, General Jimmy Doolittle, his whole team that you guys know the story of, 1942, 80 great airmen, led by this incredibly daring, innovative, accomplished, and talented aviator, struck at the very heart of Japan in a raid that inspired a nation and turned the tide of a war. Next Saturday, they'll have their final toast. 4 of the raiders are still alive, and rather than waiting for it just to be 2, they've decided to have all 4 join together, open that bottle they've been saving for all these years, and toast General Doolittle and the rest of the Raiders one final time. It's going to be a really sad day in a lot of ways, but it's going to be a magnificent day if you're an airman. A week from Saturday, raise a toast to Jimmy Doolittle and the team. Next slide. By the way, it's been a tough year all around for our Air Force. We've lost people who built this place, who built the legacy that you inherit, who built our Air Force. General David Jones was Chief of Staff of the Air Force and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Betty and I attended his funeral on Friday at Arlington. General Bob Rutherford was commander of U.S. Transportation Command and the commander of Air Mobility Command. He was a combat veteran of Vietnam with 165 sorties flying fighters. And then, of course, there's some of our real, true Air Force warrior heroes. Robbie Reisner, multiple kills, inspirational leader of our POWs in Vietnam. Boots Blessé, double ace, the father of fighter tactics in our Air Force. Ralph Parr, great hero from Korea and Vietnam, and maybe the greatest warrior of them all, the most highly decorated American warrior since Douglas MacArthur. Colonel Bud Day, Medal of Honor winner, first performance in the prisoner of war camps in Vietnam, along with General Reisner. 70 individual awards in his military career, over 50 of them for valor in combat. Unbelievable. Just those 4 guys I just mentioned, just those 4 great warriors. This is part of what they wore on their chest. The Congressional Medal of Honor, 4 Air Force Crosses, 2 Distinguished Service Crosses, the equivalent of the Air Force Cross in the Army Air Corps, 6 Silver Stars, 20 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 8 Bronze Stars with Valor, 80 Air Medals, and 9 Purple Hearts, along with all that other stuff they were awarded. You don't replace this kind of courage in an Air Force. You just admire it and celebrate it and try to emulate it. That's your job. By the way, this last year we also lost Colonel Ruth Lucas, the first African-American female to be promoted to colonel in our Air Force. in 1968, which was a pretty tumultuous time with race relations in this country. Until she retired in 1973, Ruth Lucas was an icon in our Air Force in the worlds of training and education. Inspirational, fearless, incredibly bright. This lady led the way into a new era for education and training for our military. Most of you probably haven't heard of her. I'd encourage you to go Google her and learn a little bit about this incredible piece of your heritage. Next slide. I love talking about heritage because it's so important to our business, guys. It's part of who you are now. It's part of your DNA. Anytime I'm getting ready to speak and I'm tired and I'm kind of don't have quite the focus I need to, I like to sit and look at pictures. I have a bunch of them people send me, like this one, from Arlington National Cemetery in the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. This was the day Hurricane Sandy rolled into the Washington, D.C. area. It was cold, the wind was blowing sideways, nobody was watching. And these great soldiers of the old guard, just take a look. Every line's perfect. Every movement was precise. Every order the same as if 3,000 people had been staring as they executed the maneuvers. This is what being a member of the United States military is all about. Follow their example. Sometimes pictures don't quite do it for me, though, so I use video a lot. Just a little bit ago, before I came out here, it's been a tough weekend, tough week so far. I'm tired. I need a little bit of inspiration. There's one video that I look at that fires me up every time I see it. Let's run this one, Fred.
United States Air Force Academy. Join now for your chance to fly.
Okay, who did it? Get up here. I love the glasses off move at the end. That's my favorite, because it was bright out there. Congratulations, Dave. Nice job.
Thank you, sir.
That was good work, actually. You do me a favor? You take one of these for me?
I will do, sir.
Well done. Well done. Keep it up. I've got room on my CAG for a video guy. Well done. I really got a kick out of that. By the way, I have other videos I look at too. Let me show you one more that does kind of fire me up. Fred. That's a great video, isn't it? Put together by the 2nd Combat Camera Squadron, a great group of folks who do an unbelievable job of telling the story of our Air Force. Last time I showed this video, I got some people afterwards a little upset because I got fired up and I came out afterwards wearing my Captain Air Power mask. People thought it was demeaning to the position of the Chief of Staff, and it was beneath me. They just don't understand. Because my sinister plot is working. My legions are forming. This is the newest member of my Air Power posse. This is Logan Schaefer. His mom, Megan, is a Lieutenant Colonel Select. She's my public affairs officer. She's an incredibly proud lady. She's really good at what she does. She's proud of her family, and she's proud of her Air Force. And that kind of leads me into what I want to talk to you guys about for the next few minutes. Next slide, please. I want you to think for a second. Don't respond yet. But I want you to think about why you came to the Air Force Academy. Been a while for you guys. But think back to before you came here. Why is it that you decided to come to USAFA? And I'm sure a couple of you came because the sports excited you and you got recruited by somebody. But did anybody in here in the back of their mind have this idea that maybe this academy was kind of this shining place on the hill? It's a place that'll make me a better person. It gives me a chance to do something that other people don't get to do. To fly, to jump out of airplanes, to soar. To do something that really matters with my life after I graduate. To make a difference. To serve my country. Now be honest with me, because you're supposed to do that here. And if you had any of those thoughts when you came here, raise your hand. Okay? Now, of all you who raised your hands, how many of you still feel that way? So there's hope. And for those who didn't put your hand up, I want you to pay particular attention to what I talk about today. I came into the Air Force because I was in love with the airplanes. I wanted to fly. I stayed in the Air Force because I fell in love with the people and with the idea of the Air Force and what it stood for and what it represented for this country and what it did for this country every single day. And I came to learn pretty quickly in my career, and I think if you talk to anybody who's been doing this a while, they'll tell you the same thing. What makes our Air Force great is not the airplanes, not the missiles, not the satellites. They're cool, but it's people and the pride they exhibit that make this Air Force the best in the world. Those two things, people and pride, are what this business is all about. And if you don't bring an understanding and respect for people and pride in what you're about to do when you walk out the doors of the academy, don't bother coming. Because we don't need you. Let me tell you about some of the things that give me pride. You got your own, a whole different set of things, different set of people, but I want you to think about what it is that makes you proud. And then try and tie something about this Air Force you're about to step into that equation. When I was a young guy, I'm from Texas. How many Texans we got in here? How many of you been to the Alamo? You better have your hands up. How many of the rest of you been to the Alamo? Yeah, great place, isn't it? My first time at the Alamo, I was a pretty young guy. My dad took me early in life, so I'd be dunked in the right waters properly. And the thing that stood out to me about the Alamo was, well, actually two things. One, it's not that big. I mean, it's really a pretty small place. So anybody who was in there defending that place, even with its older fence lines and buildings that existed when the battle actually took place, they had to know each other. They had to be pretty closely connected. There weren't that many of them either. And the other thing that struck me was the story of Jim Bowie. You guys have all heard the legend. Jim Bowie's sick the last couple of days of the battle. He's on a cot in a small storeroom behind the main facade. The morning of the big final fight, William Travis walks in, checks on him, thanks him for staying and serving, makes sure his 2 pistols are loaded. He sees that famous Bowie knife laying on the table by the side of the bed. He wishes him well, and he heads back to lead the defense. And after all the defenders are killed, the walls are overcome by the Mexican soldiers, the last guy alive is Jim Bowie lying on that cot. And the soldiers arrive at the door of the small storage room, and as they charge in, Jim Bowie shoots the first two with those pistols. And then they overwhelm him. It's an amazing story. He suffered multiple wounds. The only thing we know that's fact is that his body had multiple bullet and stab wounds in it. When they told his mom, Reza, who lived back in Kentucky, about her son dying, and told her about all the injuries to his body, she gave a quote which is on the wall of the Alamo Museum. Here it is. This is the best mom quote ever. And from the day I saw it, I hope that if I ever died serving my country, that my mom would be able to say something like that. And from the day I first visited the Alamo, I have always wondered if I was lying on a cot in a storage room and I knew everybody else in the Alamo was dead and the entire Mexican army showed up at the door, would I throw up my hands and beg for mercy? Or would I kill the first two guys through the door with those pistols and then reach for that knife? I don't know. What would you do? By the way, answer that question for yourself before you come out the door. Because the airmen you lead, I guarantee you they're going to die with that knife in their hand. We left the Gulf War to come home. We were crossing back into the U.S. airspace for the first time. We've been gone for about 7.5 months. There's a different feeling to returning to the U.S. from a European vacation than there is to returning to the U.S. with a bunch of people you just fought with to protect its interests. Somehow it's just different. We crossed into U.S. airspace, we checked in with Boston Center, and a few minutes after that, for the first time in 7.5 months, we saw the U.S. We saw the tip of the state of Massachusetts. And it was kind of overwhelming, surprisingly. So I dropped my mask and I sang America the Beautiful to myself as loud as I could. I'll never forget how horrible it sounded or how proud I was when I was done. From that minute forward, I stood a little taller. Last time I was here, I showed this photo and talked about my dad. This is him pinning wings on my son John's chest. John's class of 2003 from the academy. I saw this as kind of a circle of life thing, I guess. That's why this picture's so meaningful to me. Well, life has continued. John now has a son, and the circle of life continues. Last slide was my dad teaching John about the thing he loved the most, the thing he was best at, which was flying airplanes. This is me teaching young Austin Welsh about the thing I do the best, which is lying on the couch. I am the master. Another circle of life close. And this is John holding Austin the first day he was born in the hospital room where his wife is resting. John's studying a medical journal for his next surgery, which is coming up in about 20 minutes. He's in orthopedic surgery residency now after being medically grounded and discharged from the Air Force. John lost his dream. He built a new one. He is resilience. He is flexibility. He is focus. He is pride. Like Megan, he's immensely proud of his family, and he's proud of what he does, and that's why he's so dang good at it. Bring that to the Air Force. This last year, I was in the hospital visiting with Betty, had a little trouble, was in the hospital for a while. And while I was there, I had the chance to go down and visit every day a young Air Force combat controller who was in the hospital. His name's Zach Reiner. He'd been shot in the hip, up the femur had been fractured at the top of his bone. Sciatic nerve was torn. He was in pretty bad shape. And I got to go see him and his fiancée every day. His dad was there with him. Now, Zach Reiner was awarded the Air Force Cross in 2008 for basically single-handedly saving his 10-man patrol, which is part of a larger assault force in the mountains of Afghanistan when they came under fire by 200 insurgents above them in the mountaintops. He was wounded in the leg, and he stood in the open firing back at the enemy, calling in airstrikes for 6 hours, helping people climb down a 60-foot cliff while he was doing it. This guy's the real deal. Talking to him in the hospital every day, I was astonished by his energy level, by his enthusiasm. He can't wait to get to physical therapy. He can't wait to walk again. He can't wait to run again. He can't wait to do this. He can't wait to do that. Zach Reiner's never had a negative thought in his life. Guy's a hero. I'd walk out of his hospital room every day about that much taller. Just knowing him makes me proud. Left-hand picture there, the guy on the right carrying that 9mm like he's going to do a quick draw. It's Ryan Thornton. Ryan was my son John's roommate in Tiger 10, class of 03. Right now he's an C-130 aircraft commander and instructor pilot, and when this picture was taken, he was deployed to Afghanistan. He and his crew, shown there on the left, along with a medical team shown on the right, were part of the crew of Bandage 3-3, an aeromedical evacuation mission using that C-130 that was moving around Afghanistan between combat outposts to collect casualties and move them back to the theater hospitals. Pretty impressive group of people. The medical team on the right is led by the lady in the front there, Captain Adriana Valadez. She's actually an Air Force reservist. Full-time job is as an ICU trauma nurse at the Military Medical Center in San Antonio. She's been doing that for about 12 years. She saved lots of lives. They picked up a patient at Mazar-e Sharif who'd been wounded badly. Bleeding had been stopped in a minor quick surgery at the combat outpost there. They'd thrown him on the C-130, and they thought they could go to pick up another patient at another outpost before they headed back to the hospital at Bagram. Unfortunately, after they got airborne, he started bleeding again from both the entry and the exit wound, and bleeding pretty heavily. Adriana and the medical team decided that he couldn't make it to the combat outpost. They needed to get to the hospital now. So they told the air crew turned and started running for Bagram as fast as the C-130 will go. Along the way, the medical team worked to keep him alive, doing some pretty dramatic things to make that happen. As they started the descent into Bagram over the mountains, the air was turbulent, the airplane was going faster than it normally goes, and it was bouncing around pretty good in the back end. Adriana was having trouble keeping pressure on the wound, so she actually strapped herself to the litter and put her hands inside the wounds and kept them compressed as the airplane descended and landed, desperately trying to keep him alive. Got him on the ground. Ambulance was waiting. They loaded him, and the litter into the ambulance. She continued to treat him until they got him to the ER. They took him into surgery. They saved his life. They even saved his leg. She saved his life. When I first met Adriana, I asked her if she knew who the guy was. She said, "I'd love to know, but we never really know who they are." He had a beard. When I told her, she was surprised. Zach Reiner had no idea. He was unconscious the whole time. I hope to introduce them to each other one of these days. He's an Air Force hero. So is she. She's also some of you in about 2 or 3 years. I met Showtime up in Alaska. He's an F-22 pilot, instructor, and weapons officer. He's a pretty impressive guy. He's SOFA class of 97. Not too long ago, Showtime and 3 of his buddies were in the Middle East. They were flying a patrol over the Persian Gulf, and they intercepted some Iranian F-4s that had intercepted a U.S. aircraft out over the water. The difference was the Iranians had no idea they were there. Showtime pulled in underneath the other aircraft, actually flew directly underneath them, checked out their weapons load, and finally pulled up alongside them about 500 feet off their wing and came up on a common frequency and suggested they go home. And they returned to Iran. Showtime is air dominance. It's going to be your job pretty quick. He'll teach you how to do it. He's a proud man. You should be proud of him. Heather Blackwell, class of 97. That's her on the left, by the way. Hanging out with her peeps. Senator Ben Nelson from Nebraska and then Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Mike Mullen. This is taken when Heather was a legislative affairs fellow on the Hill working in Senator Nelson's office. Admiral Mullen's one of her heroes. She paid attention to what he said. She was amazed by his knowledge of the world. He's a pretty good role model, guys. Don't just look for him in blue. They're all over the place. Heather Blackwell's a pretty good role model, too. She now works for me in my front office as my assistant exec. Heather Blackwell cares about everybody. She's the first one to worry about how somebody's feeling. How's their family doing? How's your child doing? What are you thinking about for your next assignment? You don't look like you're doing well today. Can I help with something? She's always the first one to ask because she pays attention. I would love to work for Heather Blackwell. Want a role model? Use her. Guy on the right here is Switch Bell. So is that. Switch, stand up and wave. That's Switch Bell. Yusafa class of 02. He's an F-15E pilot and a really, really good one. He's got about 3,000 hours now, about 300 or 400 hours in combat. The guy with him is actually an RAF exchange pilot named Wiki. Wiki's a backseater. They just come back from a mission. You guys heard of Cop Keating? If you haven't heard of Cop Keating, Google that. C-O-P-K-E-A-T-I-N-G. Combat Outpost Keating is the site of one of the most violent battles of the war in Afghanistan. 2 Army Medal of Honor winners from that single battle. Once these guys arrived on the scene, there wasn't another casualty on the U.S. side. They spent a lot of time and a lot of ordnance protecting the people on the ground. That's what airmen do. Isaac's proud of what he does. I'm proud of Isaac. He's you in not too many years. Mongo Kingery and Sunshine Johnson and Matt Farr, HH-60 helicopter pilots. They fly the Pedros, the rescue helicopters. This is from a ceremony in Kadena Air Base, Okinawa, where I had the pleasure of presenting them with the Distinguished Flying Cross for a mission they flew in Afghanistan. A 7-hour, harrowing, bullet-riddled, terrifying combat sortie where they saved 10 coalition soldiers, 2 who eventually died. But the other 8 had no chance without these guys and the PJs who were with them. They'll go anywhere to bring you home. That's the oath they take. 04, 08, 09. They'll be your instructors. They'll be your squadron commanders. They'll teach you how to do what they do. All you have to bring is enough pride to do it. Jeff Majeski graduated in 09. He and his teammate here competed in the Global Strike Challenge, which is our largest nuclear bomber and missile competition in the world. There are 4 trophies presented in that competition, 3 for crews and the 1 for an operations group, an entire wing's worth of operations crews. These guys won all 3 crew trophies. And they led their operations group to victory in the team trophy. Jeff is part of the best ICBM missile crew on the planet. There's no question about that. He'll hand the job off to you. Make sure you're ready to perform at this level. How many of you know Sam? Just broke the military record in the Ironman triathlon by an hour. That's subtle. It's pretty incredible. More importantly, from my perspective, she's working at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base now in the public affairs business, and she's spectacular. Her wing commander raves about her. They meet every day to talk about what the message ought to be, what are the key things in the press the commander's got to worry about. She's doing just incredible work for our Air Force and still representing us in this way. Spectacular. How can you not be proud of that kind of effort and that kind of commitment? You know the training involved. By the way, she wasn't the only Air Force woman to compete in the Ironman triathlon. Captain Hilla Levy didn't set the new Air Force record. Let me tell you a little bit about her, though. She's an intelligence officer at Misawa Air Base in Japan. When she graduated from the academy, she became the first Puerto Rican-born Rhodes Scholar. She went into the intelligence business. She speaks 7 languages fluently. The folks in 5th Air Force, U.S. Forces Japan, consider her the most knowledgeable person in the United States Air Force, in their opinion, about the Far East, as a really young captain. She's a phenomenal officer, and she's an Iron Man. How can you not be proud of that? Share her pride. You intelligence officers are going to learn from her. That's the standard we set. Another 03 guy, Lucas Grunther. Kind of a happy-looking cadet, wasn't he? He's a happy-looking older guy, I'll tell you that. He loved life. He was fired up about everything. He was the most energetic guy in the squadron. First guy at every event. Always had new ideas, tactically, socially, everything. Grew up to fly the F-16. I met Lucas at his F-16 graduation from the Springfield, Ohio Air National Guard base, where we used to do F-16 training. I was the speaker. And I got to meet him that night along with his wife. He and Cassie were an incredible couple. This was taken at his memorial service. He was flying F-16s in Aviano, Italy earlier this year as the chief of flight safety. He was flying in a 4-ship over the Adriatic Sea on a nighttime mission. They lost contact with him sometime during the sortie. He couldn't regain it. They had no idea what happened. Flight eventually returned home, and a search and rescue effort began. Really tough search and rescue effort. The weather was horrible. Airplanes couldn't see the water. The water was so rough because of the weather around it that it was hard, even from a boat, to see anything in the water. And it took about 3 days until they found the wreckage and eventually found Lucas. They had a great ceremony in Hangar 3 there at Aviano. There's about 1,000 people there. Airmen, Italians, soldiers from Vicenza. A lot of people came to pay their respects because a lot of people knew him. He was a very open, outgoing kind of face of the American community in Italy. His wife Cassie sitting there in the middle, 8.5 weeks pregnant with their first child. The two of them were mountain climbers, outdoor psychos, basically. They loved everything about the outdoors. Hiking, mountain climbing, kayaking, everything. And they loved each other, and everybody around them could tell. They were a fantastic young married couple and a fantastic young role model couple for our Air Force. Cassie's mom is there to her left, and Gaza's mom is there to her right. Ceremony was pretty nice. Squadron did a great job, told a lot of jokes, got people laughing, got people crying. Everything you'd expect. Cassie even gave a eulogy. And when it was over, they did a great formation flyby. As the missing man formation flew overhead, his brother saluted and his mom waved goodbye. And I like to think as that number 3 airplane pulls up and goes vertical, that he's riding on the wings and he's on his way to touch the face of God. Next day, Cassie gave birth to their daughter. She named her Serene. She'll never know her dad, but she'll know all about him. And she'll always be the daughter of an American airman. This is all part of the Air Force you're joining. Good things happen, bad things happen, happy things happen, tragic things happen. The team changes, the team comes together. It's about people. It's about the pride to keep moving forward. You've heard these words before. In echelon, we carry on. It's a statement of pride, not just the words of a song or a poem. General Ed Rice, USAFA class of 78, just retired a couple weeks ago. For the last 35 years, Ed Rice has been a giant in our Air Force. And at the end of his retirement and ceremony, he made a couple of minutes of comments that I'm going to play for you here because I think they're spectacular. Listen to what this great airman had to say, and listen to how he connects the thread from where you sit to where he stood. Fred, can we run the video?
It's been 12,917 days since I graduated from the United States Air Force Academy and took my commission as a second lieutenant. And over those 3.5 decades, I have often thought of those pioneers, those giants of our Air Force, who were dreaming of skies to conquer, who had greatness in their vision, who had new eras in their brains. And every day, I have tried to do my best to add a small part to what they have started. As I taxi into the chocks here from my final full stop landing, and I can see the next pilot coming to take my place in the cockpit, a young second lieutenant, ready to start her own flight through life in our United States Air Force. As she comes closer, I can see in her eyes, as clearly as I can see anything, I've been able to see anything in my life, that she too is dreaming of skies to conquer. That she too has greatness in her vision. That she too has new eras in her brain. And tonight, as a retired airman, I will sleep well, because she and hundreds of thousands of other airmen will be guarding our nation's borders. And yes, I'll be gone, but I can tell you I am followed by more and more and more. In an echelon, they will carry on, because nothing can stop the United States Air Force.
Corny, huh? You need to know we're kind of corny people. We believe in this stuff. We live by it. We die for it. It's part of being in the profession of arms, as opposed to the job of the United States Air Force. You guys need to think about that. Before you walk out the door of this academy, I want you to make sure you fully appreciate the value of the people that you are sitting beside. All of them. Even the ones you don't like or you don't think are as talented as you are. You have no idea who is going to be in that medical crew that your life depends on. You have no idea who's going to be in the cockpit of the airplane that provides the close air support that will save your ass. You have no idea who the number 4 aircraft in a formation is going to be when you're leading your 4-ship into combat 15 years from now. Whose life will be, who will have your life in their hands. You have no clue who that's going to be. So let me make a suggestion. Value everybody. Understand that everybody in this business is critically important to what we do. They all bring something different that you don't have. They all matter. And they all deserve to be treated with respect. Here and in the Air Force. Understand that respect is key to success, that inclusion is part of our strength, and that without diversity, we have a glaring shortfall. Embrace that idea, gang, because that's where your Air Force is and is headed. And if you can't sign on to that Bill of Rights, then find another job. And if you're not going to be proud of who you are, if you're not going to be proud of what you represent, if you're not going to be proud to wear this uniform, and you think you can just come out and do the job and tolerate the rest of us, you're going to be terribly surprised. Think about the opportunity you have here. Think about the talent of the people in this room. Think about what you bring to the fight. Go back and think about, why did you come here? And if you've kind of lost that connection with doing something that matters, with the Air Force and the Academy being the shining place on a hill, at least to some degree, pull it back out of the closet. Because if you don't have it when you walk out here, we are going to blow your doors off. Because we care about all that stuff. Around here, you've got reminders everywhere of what's important. Pay attention to them. Stop and read the names. Put your hand on the stone. You can feel the pride. You just got to try. I've been doing this a long time, and I love the Air Force. I am corny about it, but I love it because of airmen. Here's a really corny comment for you. Even though I've never met you, I'd die for you. And I'm naive enough to think you'd do the same for me if it really mattered. That's why we wear a uniform. That's why we serve. That's why you took the oath. If I'm ever defenseless and in mortal danger, I know Zach Reiner and his badass buddies are coming to get me. If I'm ever wounded or trapped, I know that Mongo and Sunshine and the Pedros and their guardian angel PJs will find me. And they'll bring me or my body home. Even now, before you join the bigger Air Force, I know that you will never let me down. And I can assure you I'll die before I let you down. And right now, where you sit, with the commitment you've already made, the talent you bring, and the nation you stand for, you represent everything I believe in. That's why I love the Air Force. You inspire me. Our heritage is a string that runs through every generation of airmen. It's a gift given to us by those who've gone before and kind of magnified and polished by those that you will stand beside. Leadership is also a gift. It's given by those who follow. But you have to be worthy of it. That's your job now. And you'll find that when you are worthy of it, that the people who follow you will all stand a little prouder too. My name is Mark Welsh. I'm an American airman, just like you. Beat Army.